Hello and welcome to episode 52 of the Ohio Huntsman Podcast. And this week we talk to Mike Swatzentruber from Hunter's Blend Coffee. And we talk about their coffee, of course, and what makes it so good. But we also sort of get to hear the origin story of why they started this coffee company and how it's more than just putting, a guy with a bow in his hand or a set of antlers on a bag of coffee. They do a lot to support hunting and conservation, which is way more than you can say for most other coffee companies. They're more likely to be supporting, Humane Society or PETA. So they're a coffee company that they're all hunters. They get hunting, they love hunting, and they want to do what they can to support it. And so it was a really interesting conversation. I really enjoyed talking to Mike. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it, and hopefully you'll check out some of their coffee, because I can tell you it is good coffee. So if you're a coffee drinker, if you enjoy a good cup of coffee, check them out. There'll be a link in the description to all of their stuff, their website where you can buy coffee, their social media pages, and all of that. So check out Hunter's Blend, and like I said, hopefully you enjoy the conversation with Mike. Before we get into that, I want to talk about Monster Whitetail Grub. So Monster Whitetail Grub is an Ohio deer feed and deer mineral company, and they try to source everything from Ohio as much as possible, like even down to the packaging. So by supporting Monster Whitetail Grub, you're supporting the Ohio economy. Hunter's Blend is also an Ohio company. They're in Mechanicsburg, Ohio. So we got a lot of Ohio companies in this one, and we're just trying to do our part to help the Ohio economy. And so Monster Whitetail Grub, like I said, they've got deer feed. They've also got deer mineral. And interestingly enough, I was listening to an episode of the Meat Eater podcast this past week, and they were interviewing a guy, an evolutionary biologist by the name of Doug Emlen. He wrote the book Animal Weapons, and he was actually talking about how bucks go into a state of basically osteoporosis, where they've got bone density issues during the rut because they've just used all this mineral to grow antlers. Now they go into the rut, they're not eating a lot. And so it got me thinking about mineral for your deer and how important that can be to keep them in a healthy state from year to year and just keep your deer in your area that we all love to chase healthy. So if you're interested in that, check out Monster Whitetail Grub. There'll be a link in the description, and that's the best way to find them. Just hit the link and check out some of their mineral. So with that, let's get into the episode. Welcome to the Ohio Huntsman Podcast, where three brothers, Jason, Jacob, and Jeff, discuss all things hunting in Ohio. Our goal is to be your source for accurate and reliable hunting news and conservation issues in the great state of Ohio, as well as some fun and interesting conversations along the way. This is the Ohio Huntsman Podcast.
Are you listening?
All right, today on the podcast, we've got Mike Swatzentruber from Hunter's Blend Coffee. And I want to start off by saying thanks to Mike for taking time to come on and talk to us. Mike, can you start off by telling us what it is you do with Hunter's Blend?
Well, hey, thanks a lot, Jason. I really appreciate the opportunity that you guys are taking to spend some time. I'm involved more with, I guess, maybe communications and some of the marketing side of things. We all kind of work together. It's three brothers-in-law. Here in Paul does all the importing and roasting and all of that day-to-day hands-on. He's the Q grader, which we can talk about that later, but it's part of what you need to be able to do to be able to grade coffee, know what you're buying, know how to brew it, or how to roast it and that sort of thing. And then I'm involved more with some of our partnerships and communicating with people and this sort of thing. So awesome. I always enjoy an opportunity like this, so I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. So you touched on a few things there. So for people that don't know, Hunter's Blend, one of your slogans on your website is, coffee for hunters by hunters. And you touched a little bit on, grading coffee and things like that. Tell us, I'm we're trying to start this podcast thing here and get this up and going, and I've kind of got that entrepreneurial mindset, right? And so I always love a good origin story on somebody, starting something from nothing. So can you tell us the origin story of Hunter's Blend, how you guys got started into this?
Sure. And you know what? I'm a lot like you. I'm always intrigued to hear, starting where people start from. And when my brother-in-law, Paul, started doing this, I years ago, it's going 15, 20 years ago. I was like, you're going to start buying coffee? Like, what even is that? I mean, we all drink coffee, but just out of thin air, you're going to do this? And I didn't even have a concept for it.
Right.
And that's one of the cool things about a free market system like we have here. You have the freedom to try, you have the freedom to fail, you have the freedom to try again. And that's a whole other story, but that's one of the things that makes America great is the freedom for people to try. And so the way it all started, Paul was in a missions organization, and a lot of what they did was supporting church work in countries, around Central America, over to Africa, and those types of places. And a lot of them, incidentally, were coffee growing regions. And a lot of what they did was supported financially some of the work that they did. So they'd go down, say, to Nicaragua, and they'd have meetings. Well, those were often held up in the mountains where it's a little bit cooler. Well, that happens to be coffee growing regions. And year after year, these church leaders would come to them with, they were a little, it was a little hard for them to ask, but they needed money, and they're good people. It wasn't something they wanted to do, but they definitely needed money for what they were doing in their church work and things like that. And finally, he just saw this revolving door that it wasn't, they weren't self-sustaining. And finally one year he said, I just paid $13 for 15 whatever for a bag of Starbucks, and you guys are elbow deep in coffee here. I would think you're flush with cash, and they took him to the coffee education real quick. There's 5 to 6 levels of handlers, buyers and sellers between the smaller coffee farmers and the final destination up here. And a lot of those people protect their sources or their outlets. So there isn't, kind of that entrepreneurial free market concept wasn't quite as maybe forefront, and they didn't have the availability either to just go market their coffee around places. These remote farmers, there's a short window from when they pick it to when they have to sell it. And it's not like you can shop it around, and they're kind of stuck with when the buyer rolls up in his Jeep back up this, road to their farm and says, well, here's what we'll pay you. And it's, take it or leave it sometimes. So they were kind of beholding, number one, coffee is a commodity. And so that determines the final price, but then you've got to take out all the cuts that all those middlemen have to take nobody works for free. So by the time the farmer gets essentially the leftovers, Diego, the farmer in Nicaragua that we buy from, one year he had told Paul he's happy, he's broke. And, Paul was like, come again? Well, he was at the end of the year, he paid all his debts back, all his workers were paid, and he was even, and he was happy. And it's just, in some years, clearly they're making money, but there's a lot of years where they're breaking even or even losing money. So, he asked them about fair trade, and they just kind of laugh and say, fair for who? Fair trade, coffee does what it can. It's trying to do a good thing. Farmers are limited to putting 10% of their coffee into a fair trade program. And that fair trade portion on that 10%, it's just a certain premium over top of whatever commodity price is. In a bad year, they might only be breaking even on that 10% and losing money on the 90%. So it's very limited. It's taking some money, spreading it super thin over a lot of people, and the farmers don't see much. They don't see much impact from that. And then there's a lot of paperwork and stuff that goes along with it. So It took a long time. People in the coffee industry told Paul it couldn't really be done, buying direct from farmers. It's done a little bit more now. It's still not super common, but it's being done more. But he was explained that you're going to have to become a Q grader, and that's kind of like a wine taster, but it's they're trained at grading coffee. That is so that somebody in Portland, somebody in Des Moines, Iowa, and somebody in Orlando, Florida could all taste the same coffee, and they'll come within 1 or 2 points of grading it the same. And go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but when they're grading coffee, are they grading the raw bean, or are they taking the bean, turning it into a liquid product and grading it at that level?
Yeah, so they brew the coffee up, and then there's 10 different profiles that they taste and feel, the fruity and the chocolatey and all these different acidity, all these different parts that make up a total profile, and each one gets graded on a scale of 1 to 10. So at the end of the day, you've got a 75 or 85 or 90 grade coffee. So you have to know what you're buying, and then you have to know how to roast it to get the proper flavor profile out of the coffee. It's a whole science, basically. So he got his Q grade certification and started importing, and basically made agreements with the farmers as to what prices they can both live with, and what so the farmers end up doing a whole lot better. Diego was on the verge of losing his farm, and he's now been able to save the farm. He's got 100 people or more that he was able to move to full-time, year-round employment versus seasonal. He built a school and a medical center. He's sponsored a lot of church plants. He's just always looking for ways to do things with that extra income. And it's not socialism. It's not a handout. But when you can pay the farmer a premium for producing a premium coffee, and you pay him the full amount versus, including what all the middlemen used to get, the farmer has a whole lot more money. And then when he takes that money, he can spend it in his city, go buy tires for his Jeep, and the guy at the tire store can go buy batteries for his Walkman and
Sure.
meat from the butcher, and then the butcher can that money starts to turn over in the village because of free market, basically. So it's a pretty cool story to see how it changed those guys' lives. And then this is now whatever it is, 15-20 years later, and the Hunter's Blend origin is both Nicaraguan and Thailand. In Thailand, and again, this wasn't like the intent at the beginning, but in one of the visits, the guy that runs the co-op there was a little sheepish when he told Paul that there's about 80 women there sorting beans, and they have employment most of the year. And he said about 3/4 of them were previously away from their families in Bangkok in some form of the sex trade. And when they heard there were jobs at home, they came back to be with their families. They have employment there with dignity. And again, it's not a social program. It's not a handout. It's just free market at work and doing business ethically with other people. And it changed the village. It's Sure. vibrant. There's a physical change in the village. And its jobs bring dignity to people. I think that's how we're designed to work and care for things. And when there's an opportunity to do that, it changes people's lives, and then financially as well. When there's money available to live and provide for yourself, makes a big difference.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a quick question, and it may completely come out of being 100% ignorant, but when you are going down, I guess, and cutting out the middlemen,
Mm-hmm.
is there any type of coffee cartel, for lack of a better term, that you could be upsetting? Is it risky? Are you I know down in that area of the world, there's a lot of cartel and whatever,
yeah,
because you're obviously taking money out of their pockets by giving more money to your farmer.
Correct. No, it's not a crazy question. There were times where and places where they told Paul, we'll stay around the house, stay inside during the day, then tonight we'll go out and visit where we need to go. There was a little it was a little sketchy at times in places. Not necessarily near all the time and everywhere, but there has been that. It is the coffee business can be a little cartelish. So it's not to the degree that maybe it used to be in as many places, but it can have that vibe. Some places you're a little more careful about those relationships. So yeah, kind of interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So you said that was Mike got his Q grader, like, would you say 15 years ago or so?
That's Paul. That's
Paul,
a good question. No, it's fine. You know what? I should find out. I don't know when he got it, but it was early on, because in order to be able, because what can happen is you can have somebody and it happens now, people will approach you at the coffee meetings, at a big trade show or whatever, and hey, this is our family farm, here's our beans, we'd love to sell you some. And unless you know the people and can trust them, you don't know that what you get when you buy the container is going to be the same thing that their sample was. There's a lot of trust, and that's the thing. It's not super easy, and that was one of the things that the people advised Paul early on, is like, you can't really trust these relationships. And fortunately, these relationships were started after years of relationships in the mission work and other endeavors. There was an establishment of trust beforehand, before the coffee business started. So but yes, that was early on, where he had to get his Q grade certification so that he knew what he was buying and be able to know what to pay for it, and then also how to roast it up and stuff. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So was the idea from the start to do a hunter's blend, or was he just interested in, starting this coffee business and helping these people out in places like Nicaragua? And the hunter's blend idea came later, or was that part of the foundation of this business?
No, that came later. In fact, originally the thought was just to be the middleman, not the middleman, but be the importer, buy direct from the farmers and then sell it wholesale up here. Okay. And then along the way that's when he decided to start roasting himself. And then it's not that many years ago, 5 years ago, where he had the ideas, there's not really a coffee being marketed to the hunting community. And I'm going to do this hunter's blend. And it's actually my favorite of all the coffee that they import. It's the way the blend is put together. It's really smooth. It's fairly dark, but still very smooth. And that's where we stumbled across this thing hiding in plain sight. And that is, in our experience, most coffee importers tend to be located in places like Seattle, Portland, San Francisco. There's a tendency to view the world very differently than those of us in the flyover states. Sure. And in the hunting community, in the country, rural way of life, with discretionary income that they have, it's probably not going to support Whitetails Unlimited or RMEF or something like that. They're more likely to have a PETA sticker on their car. I would if I was going to put my money on it. So it's just if you think about it, if you go to a coffee shop in a big city, in your hunting gear, and you think about, how do I feel right now? How well do I fit in? And the import business can be, and this is a generality, but it is a general way things are. That's kind of what you see on the import side as well. So it's kind of like discovering, hiding here in plain sight. This is a hunter friendly coffee. We've eliminated, just because of the model, there's no middlemen that are going to be working against hunting, let's say. Even if you're a hunter friendly or Second Amendment friendly company. If you're stuck buying from an importer that maybe isn't, it's great that the retail side is hunter friendly, and that's where we realized that, on the import side, this is hunter friendly just by default. And then we support, just got a communication today from somebody involved with NWTF. We like to support those organizations as well, and on the positive side. So after Paul had started Hunter's Blend, then he approached my other brother-in-law Ken and I and our wives. So us three couples are involved in the Hunter's Blend coffee, as a separate brand, and marketing that to the hunting community. It's like, we have our own hunting gear, our own high-tech gear. We don't have to go to a camping store that's notorious for supporting, animal rights or animals first, organizations. We have our own hunting gear, and it's like, why don't we have our own coffee as well? For those that want to, they can buy a really top shelf coffee that has eliminated the potential for it to do harm against hunting, and in fact, actively helps hunting. And it's a top shelf. It's more than sticking a set of deer antlers onto a random coffee bag. It's actually is a hunting coffee, if you want to call it that.
So a couple things I want to touch on there. So you guys sent us a bag of this stuff, and I can vouch for the top notch, right? So I did a little blind taste test with my wife, right? We had Hunter's Blend coffee. I thought, wow, this is really good coffee. And then a couple days went by, and I swapped it out with our old coffee, and I didn't tell her.
Yeah.
And so we got up in the morning, and she could tell right away. She's like, "This isn't Hunter's Blend. What is this?" I said, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you could tell. Yeah. So it is good coffee. We enjoyed it quite a lot.
Good. Yeah, and you don't have to be a coffee aficionado or a coffee snob. A lot of us don't think of ourselves as that way, but when you do, like you said, when you get a really good coffee beside just a very average one, you can tell the difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to touch on the organizations that you support. So because I saw on your website the different hunting organizations that you support, and I really like seeing that. Right, that's another plus for me.
Yeah.
So can you sort of expand on that a little bit? Like what is it that you guys are doing with people like Sportsman's Alliance or Whitetails Unlimited? You mentioned National Wild Turkey Foundation. Like, what are you guys doing there?
In a lot of cases, we're donating to them for their auctions, things like that, where we can, if we donate product and they get to auction it off for financial, at their fundraisers and things like that. The one that we're really, I guess, I don't know if you'd call it our flagship, the organization that we really want to help promote as much as possible, is Sportsman's Alliance. They're kind of like the NRA for hunting. You've got all your habitat and animal, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Wild Turkey, Whitetails Unlimited, that are either working, for population numbers or habitat, and those are all good. What Sportsman's Alliance does is, if you lose your right to hunt, elk numbers and turkey habitat really don't matter a whole lot if you can't hunt them.
Right.
And so what Sportsman's Alliance does, and we just really appeal, we're all members ourselves, but we really make an appeal for people to check them out. It's Sportsman's Alliance, MENS Alliance. And what they do is they monitor proposed legislation. This spring, there was over 500 pieces of legislation they were keeping an eye, proposed legislation that they were keeping an eye on. They try to educate the public so that the public can comment to lawmakers and get involved before it becomes an actual piece of legislation. Because the sooner we get involved on that curve, the better off we are. And so what the antis do is they don't very often. Sure, you have your PETAs and people like that are very out in the open, but Humane Society USA is probably a real good example. They're the ones that have the in the eyes of the angels, commercials on TV, that little sad puppy kitty, send $30 a month in, and well-meaning people want to, you feel bad. Okay, you send in your, well, less than 1% of their money goes to your local Humane Society. Basically none. It all goes to legislation, lobbyists, activists, lawyers that are fighting. It's an animals first organization. It's not about protecting dogs and cats. It's about ending hunting. And their previous president, I mean, that was he said that's what their goal is, to end hunting. And so they're not going to say that out front, because people become aware, and then they try to pay attention to that. So if you come in and, like a wolf in sheep's clothing, who's against trying to take that stray cat in, or that poor dog that's needing some help or whatever. So that's how they get people. The other thing that they're notorious for is humanizing the animal. The big cuddly grizzly bear. Well, not a lot cuddly about him in real life, or the wolf. There's certain things that's just for some reason the public is easily attracted to, and so if you humanize the animal, it makes it, so they'll do things like this spring, the big thing, and I don't know if you saw it on different social media, but the big move with a lot of proposed legislation was to ban predator hunting contests. So if you think about, of all the hunters, how many people, let's say, for example, hunt coyotes? Well, it's a smaller percentage. It's not near everybody. Right. And then how many people participate in a coyote hunting contest? Well, the reason for those coyote hunting contests is to try to help manage that population. But again, that's an even smaller sector of the population. So rather than these organizations going after, hey, we're going to ban all hunting, all the hunters would be up in arms. If you go after coyote hunting contests, first of all, most people don't do that, so they don't really care, and there's, it slips by, and what it is, it's death by a million cuts, or a frog in hot water. So they don't go after they just nip around the edges and try to fray, and they do. Every year there's just more and more fraying of our freedom to hunt. And so that's what, long story to say, that's what Sportsman's Alliance does, is shed light on what's going on out there in trying to get the public involved. And that's one thing we can all do if we can become more educated on what hunting does. I mean, hunting is conservation. That's why our deer and elk and turkey numbers are the highest in recorded history, is because of the North American model of conservation. It's been, the estimates are anywhere from $1.5 to $2.5 billion a year is what hunting contributes to conservation. Yep. And so and I'm probably preaching to the choir here. If we all, though, learn to talk in an educated way with our friends and neighbors, then when a proposed piece of legislation comes to the ballot box, if we've had a logical conversation with them and explain to them, like Ted Nugent's so good at, he'll talk about how what hunting does is, of course, the Department of Natural Resources or whoever it is in the state uses hunting to help manage the excess population. You harvest the excess population to make room for the next generation, so that you keep the herd and the numbers in balance with the food sources and all those other things. Mm-hmm. It's actually part of the plan, and when you do it properly, there's this harmony that exists. And so we're actually protecting and stewarding a resource. And the more we can, whatever it is, maybe 10%, 20% of the people might be avid anti-hunters. And what is it? Is it 6%, I think, of the population that are hunters?
Yeah, I think so.
we're in the vast minority. And that's the other thing. We can't afford to, I can't be stabbing somebody in the back because they use a different implement than I do that I don't agree with. I mean, after a while, it's the guy that, the bow guy, knocks down the guy who shoots, longer distance with a rifle, and then the crossbow or whatever. Then pretty soon it's only the traditional bow. Well, after a while, the people that go on their rants, after a while, the only guy who's an actual hunter he's out there in a loincloth and a homemade spear. Come on. We're all on the same team, and I don't have to like how somebody else hunts, but if it's legal, if it's in according to the local game laws, they're following the regulations, we have to support each other.
Yep.
We can't afford to stab if we stab each other in the back, PETA doesn't even have to get out of bed in the morning.
Right.
And so if that's the one thing, if we can stay unified, support each other, doesn't mean we can't have a difference of opinion and try to, help each other see things a different way. That's great. But we're all on the same team. And then if we can have a good conversation with somebody who doesn't understand what hunting is about, we're not a bunch of goobers out there, on the back of a pickup just firing indiscriminately with an automatic weapon at something and laughing and watching it lay there and cut the horns off. That's, we don't do that. We're ethically harvesting an animal. Sometimes there's a nice set of antlers attached, which we get to appreciate as well. Sometimes but it's always the meat is always there.
Yep.
Then when there is a piece of legislation proposed, the general public, 80% of people that are neither an anti-hunter nor a hunter themselves, but they can be swayed either way. If I've had a decent conversation with them before, and when they go to the ballot box, they can say, you know what, I don't hunt, but Joe up the street, that makes sense, and I don't think we should outlaw bear hunting in our state. That these guys are doing a good thing. I think that's the only way we can try to win this thing is by having those kind of healthy conversations with people. But anyways, that's a lot of what Sportsman's Alliance does, is gives us the ammunition, not the ammunition, but the awareness of what's going on so that we can get involved before it's too late. So I just really encourage people to check them out and consider becoming a member and supporting them. And because that's whatever you hunt, like I said, it doesn't matter if you have the habitat or the numbers. If they outlaw that hunting, then so that's really, they're like the guys down in the foundation. I used to pump concrete years ago, and them rainy days, you're down there in the slogging around in the footers, and it's muddy and it's down below grade, and nobody's ever going to see that. But if you don't have the foundation, you don't have a house. And so that's what Sportsman's Alliance does. And sorry, I got a little sidetracked from coffee.
No,
there.
That's perfect. That's perfect, because I'm so glad to hear that, right? Because I think historically, hunters, we've not been good at the legislative side, right? We just want to be left alone and go sit in the woods and do our own thing, right? But like you said, you can't just kind of ignore all of that and then one day wake up and go, oh, I can't do this anymore. They passed legislation. I wasn't even aware, right?
Correct.
And so we're actually working, we've been communicating with Sportsman's Alliance to get them on the podcast. We're just trying to get schedules lined up and
great.
To talk about some of the things that they're doing and some of that legislative work. And, like right here locally, right, you talked about that funding mechanism and hunters are conservation. We're going to see this tag increase here in the fall, the price increase on deer tags. And while it's a bummer to have to pay more, I keep trying to remind people, like, that money is going to fund the Division of Wildlife and support all of this stuff that we love to do, right? And so it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's actually a good thing that they hopefully we're going to see some good things come out of that. And so, and like you said, I think sometimes we can be our own worst enemies with, crossbow versus compound bow,
right?
Gun hunter versus archery. We're all on the same team,
right?
Or we need to be.
Well, and sometimes we don't understand. Guys in the Southeast use dogs. I don't. I've never done that. But I'm here in the Midwest. Well, like you. Well, we hunt over food plots. Well, there's some places who think that's not even hunting. It's just. And hats off to the guys, up in the Northeast who track for miles up in the Adirondacks in the snow just to try to get. I mean, that is some hunting. Or out west, the spot and stalk. I mean, that's amazing. But some places you can hunt over corn. Sometimes you can't. In Texas, that's about the only way you can hunt.
Right.
It's different by region, and that's fine. As long as it's legal in that area, we're all on the same team.
Hey, I want to pause here for a quick second and talk about one of our sponsors, which is Mastin's Deer Scents. So they're a premium scent product company, and one of the scents that I'm really excited about using this fall, they call Buck Reaper. So it's got scents from 5 different glands on a buck, which I'm really intrigued by, and I'm really excited about using this fall. Some of the other scents they have are called Fighting Mad, which is they call it a dominant buck urine, which is ideal for early season hunting. Fighting Mad with Tarsal, so they add the tarsal gland scent, which makes it ideal for rut hunting. They've got a full estrus scent, and then they've got more of like a cover scent. They just call Smell Like a Deer. So pretty interesting lineup of liquid scents. Then they've also got their double scent stack. They've got scent crystals. A lot of interesting products that I've not seen many other places. So check them out, mastinsdeerscents.com, and hopefully helps you get onto some deer this fall. Now back to the show. I want to. We've covered a lot of good ground already, but I want to talk a little bit about your guys' coffee, right? We touched a little bit on it, and so let's go through the coffee process a little bit, right? So Paul goes and grades beans or buys beans, and he's looking for the highest quality beans he can get, I'm assuming, or what is he looking for when he's picking beans?
Well, there is a sliding, not a sliding scale, but it's a little bit like the Richter scale for earthquakes. When you go, say, from an 86 to an 87 coffee or an 87 to an 88, it doesn't sound like much, but each one of those numbers, it really jumps up in cost a lot.
Okay.
So
it's like an exponential.
It is. And so a 90 grade coffee is super expensive. There's not even a lot of 90 grade coffee out there, and especially to buy it, a lot of times that'll be blended in with something else, so they can kind of get the flavor profile, but they blend it with a cheaper coffee to get the cost down, so they kind of straddle both sides there. So so there is a you can get as good a high grade of coffee as you want, depends what you want to pay for it. So this is the Nicaraguan coffee scores out at 85 to 86, and the Thailand, which is the other that's in our coffee, that's 86 to 87. So together, I mean, that puts it in the top 6% of coffee, just by comparison. So it is a high grade coffee, but then it still comes down to flavor preferences and how it's roasted. So even if it doesn't, not necessarily everybody's going to like every high grade of coffee, because they all have their different profiles and that kind of thing. The Hunter's Blend, the original roast, is a kind of a medium it's the dark side of a medium roast. It's pretty bold, but it's a far cry from being burnt or the bitter. It's still very smooth. That's probably the number one comment we hear. We have a lot of people that will tell us, you know what, I don't use creamer anymore. Well, that's the biggest compliment you could give us, because creamers used to cover up the crummy taste of crappy coffee. And so it's and it becomes its own. Even with good coffee, some people want to put creamer in because they just like it, and that's fine. I mean, there's no problem with that. But it's just, you don't have to hide a bitter sharp aftertaste. And then our black powder coffee is just is about as dark as we can make it without getting into that more burnt, charred taste. It's very. I drink the original roast, but there's a lot of people though that do like the black powder. It's pretty dark, but again, it's without being that burnt, kind of charred. So we have other, ideas. There's always stuff to work on, and you don't know some days which end is up. But we're working on other, eventually there'll be probably a lighter roast, breakfast roast, whatever you want to call it. And it's funny, a lighter roast, we all think naturally, most of us think that the darker the coffee, the more caffeine, but actually the longer you roast it, the caffeine goes down. So a lighter roast actually has more caffeine in it.
Oh, interesting.
But it's not as bold of a taste,
Okay.
So
we've talked about medium roast, dark roast, light roast. What are you changing in because you're roasting the beans, right? They're going through some kind of a change. You're roasting it longer, I think you said, or is there a temperature difference? Like what kind of levers can you pull to affect the end flavor profile of the coffee?
Well, that's the $1 million question. So you can start the coffee at a low temperature, the roasting, and gradually increase it, and basically is in a straight line, just over time until it finally reaches the peak temperature, and you leave it there so long and then drop it down. You can take it up quickly and then drop it down, or you can take it gradually up and then towards the end you jump that temperature up. And that we pretty quickly get over my head when we're talking about all of those techniques. That's
sure.
Part of what Paul does in developing the best way to roast a bean to get the best flavor out of it, or the flavor that he's looking for. And so he'll experiment with different, if you want to call it a program. And then once he finds out what is best for that coffee, then that becomes the way he roasts that coffee.
Okay.
But the funny thing is, the beans green beans they're good for quite a long time, a year or two. But if they've sat, the longer they set, then that also changes a little bit how they should get roasted. So it's a little bit of a, it's something to stay on top of over time, not just put it on autopilot either. So there's actually quite a bit to once the roasting, let's just call it program, is designed. For the most part, it stays pretty constant. But again, like I said, the longer the beans are in the warehouse, then that can change a little bit. But it's all of those things, what you just said, the temperature, the rate that it's increased, and when in the roasting process.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a sort of a comparison. It seems like on the front end, coffee, there's a lot of parallels to wine in that, there's a lot of flavor that comes from the raw product. In coffee, it's the coffee beans. In wine, it's the grapes. But then the roasting process sounds more similar to because Jacob and I have done some home brewing, and there's you can play with your brewing temperatures and things, and you're going to extract more sugars or less sugars, or you can do things with the temperature and how long, and it changes the end product. So it sounds like you get a little bit of like the wine connoisseur grading the beans on the front, and then you can play around with the roasting profile and affect the flavor that way for the finished product.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So another thing I was hoping you could help us out with, because I guess I could probably Google this, but we've got you on the phone here. So
yeah,
what's the difference between coffee and espresso? Are they physically different beans, or is it the processing of the bean that makes coffee versus espresso?
Yeah, it's more of a process, or it's more of a method of preparing coffee. So espresso is you can use different beans. I guess technically you could probably make any bean into an espresso, but I think typically it's darker. But it's super finely ground, very finely ground, and then it's packed into a little device, and then high pressure water is forced through the grounds, and then it's extracted in more of a concentrated amount. It's a lot more intense. And then that's why a lot of times you'll get a shot of that into your coffee, versus necessarily, or a lot more, you'll automatically, a lot of people would put then a lot of more cream in with it, or milk, whatever. It's just a different way of preparing the coffee, basically. Okay. Yeah.
So I've got a little bit of a funny story with espresso. So I had, this was quite a number of years back. I was in New York for a work trip, and at that time, my boss was much more into coffee than I was, and we went into some little coffee shop in New York City, and it was wedged between two buildings. You could almost stretch your arms out and touch either wall. It was this little place, and we went in there, and he ordered a cafe Americano,
okay,
which I didn't know what that was, but I learned after the fact that it's just, I think it's just espresso and water. It's basically like coffee, but it's with espresso and
right.
And
I believe that's right. Yep.
I said, oh, this is pretty good, but man, did that thing light me up.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was ordering, I said, I'll take what he's having, and
right.
Yeah, I looked it up afterwards. I said, oh, okay, now I know what that was.
Right. Yeah. I think it's essentially, it's watered down espresso, more or less, and to kind of come up with a basic, more of a brewed cup of coffee. I don't know. I'm probably like you. I typically will just get a cup of coffee if I'm somewhere. If I'm on the road driving and I need a little something extra, then I'll get a shot of espresso in the regular coffee just to get that caffeine content up there. But I'm pretty straightforward. Normally just drink a black cup of coffee myself. Yep. Okay.
So we covered the roasting process. You've got your sort of original roast, and you've got the black powder roast. Do you guys, because I'm at this stage in my life, I'm very much about simplifying things, Amazon Prime,
right,
all that sort of thing. Do you guys offer a subscription model where people can sign up and just you'll automatically deliver coffee to them monthly or whatever? Do you have a system like that?
Yeah, we do. We have a subscription which gives you a discount, and then you can set up how much and how often that you want that. It's pretty manageable for the customer and they can change it along the way. How they want to receive it. So, in other words, the frequency or what's coming in the shipment, they can adjust that as they go. So, some people, they get it monthly, weekly, just whatever setup that they want to, where it's automatic. Yeah.
Okay. That's nice.
Yeah.
Jake, Jeff, do you guys have questions? I've been sort of monopolizing his time here.
Yeah, I have a few questions about the product line. I know with a lot of these high-end coffee distributors, you have to buy, your coffee in bean form. Do you sell both bean and ground, or just beans?
We sell it both. Bean whole bean ground. We also have the K cups, which is not a traditionally highbrow coffee, but there's just more and more people like the convenience of K-Cups. And so we sell it in all three. You know what? I used to get it in bean, and even though I'm, I suppose people might think I would automatically use whole bean, I just like the convenience of ground. So I do it ground myself. It starts to lose a little bit of its freshness once you grind it. How long it's going to last on the shelf, it'll last a lot longer whole bean than it will ground. So, that's your freshest coffee. If you do get it whole bean, grind it and then put it in your brewer right away. But I don't know, for me, there's a happy medium with convenience. So it's
right.
To each their own, I guess. But yeah, we sell it both ways.
Yeah. And you can just use your normal drip coffee pot to make Hunter's Blend?
Yeah, that's what I do. I got a lot of, friends and stuff that love the French press and all of that, which is great. I just, I'm almost 53. I think I just like it easy. I just put it in the dripper and drip brewer and that's how I do it.
That's where I'm at, man. I set the timer on the coffee pot the night before. It's ready when I get up. Easy. Make it easy.
For me, that's where the benefit is. But everybody likes their own way of doing things, and that's no problem.
Yeah.
We're a couple things we're working on is a grind. It would basically be a grind that would allow us to package it in individual packets for people to use for backpacking, and then it would be made almost a little bit more like cowboy coffee, where all you need is hot water, let it settle out, and you'd have a really good. That just takes some time of getting the grind right and the packaging. So there's just always a laundry list of stuff. I was hoping we'd have that ready to roll out by now for fall, for people going out west backpacking, elk trips or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get to it some point.
So that was one of the things I wanted to ask you. So like what's new, what's coming down the line for Hunter's Blend? So you mentioned those sort of single serve packs for in the backcountry, and you
mm-hmm.
mentioned you guys are maybe working on a light roast.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you guys sort of have coming down the line here?
Well, way down the line, chocolate or cocoa beans are growing in the same fact. Diego, the Hunter's Blend is about 2/3 Nicaraguan, and Diego's probably our longest standing, relationship. He's just a good guy. In fact, if anybody wants to see his story, if they go to huntersblendcoffee.com and click on video, there's a documentary of his story, which is just really amazing. He had moved his family to Canada, living that lifestyle, and he felt like he was supposed to go back to the family farm and take it over, and he didn't really want to go, and he did, and it was tough. They nearly lost it. The banking system down there is horrific. 35% interest. just
oh wow.
Oh, just like corrupt,
Yeah.
And there's multiple miracles along the way of them saving the farm. It's a really, you have a bad day, you watch that story, and you're having a better day. It's just really cool. But anyways, he also grows cocoa beans. So that's Paul is actually messing with that. You roast them and grind and melt it down, and to make chocolate. And that's down the road. So, but hopefully someday we'll have our own chocolate line, and you can there's always chocolate covered beans and hot chocolate. My mom had she's passed away, but had a really, really good hot chocolate mix. And any store-bought hot chocolate, just every time I make it, it's good, but it just doesn't compare to that. And so, those are some things long-term, hopefully we'll have to offer. So, because it's statistically around 2/3 of the people drink coffee. And so, most of the other third probably drink chocolate milk, but a lot of coffee drinkers drink, who doesn't like chocolate milk, hot chocolate. So,
right. Yeah.
I haven't run into anybody that doesn't like it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, there's always stuff like that. It's just, we used to farm out our K-Cup process. That machine's pretty expensive, but anyways, we're doing that in-house now. So that'll actually is helping us make a better K-Cup product than what we could get before. So those are just starting to go out. And, yeah, always something.
Awesome. So you mentioned it there briefly, but where, if people are interested in trying your coffee, or so what's your website? Where do they go if they want to buy your coffee? And then if they want to follow you on social media, because you guys post some funny things to your, I know I've seen some funny things on your Instagram page and things. So
yeah, thanks. Yeah, all our social media is under Hunter's Blend. And that's on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And then our website is huntersblendcoffee.com. And on there you can see a little bit about our story. You see all the different products. You can learn about, the direct trade model. And there's a little study in there out of a coffee industry magazine about fair trade coffee. Not knocking them. It's just the reality of the end result to the farmer being pretty minimal in a lot of cases. We're not changing the world, but we can help change the world for a few farmers in their communities. And it's not something that we're doing. It's just through this relationship. It's been able to do that. And then, you can get all our different coffee on there. And then we have gear, T-shirts, hats. We kind of have a theme on a couple of T-shirts. I like my coffee black and the tea in the harbor. We're all pretty red-blooded Americans and thankful for our freedom. And so it kind of keys on that. There's a letter John Adams wrote to his wife, and he said, tea must be universally renounced. I must be weaned, and the sooner the better. So that's the slogan on the back of the shirts. And then the front is one of them is an old flag, and the other one is the Great Seal of the United States, but there's a cup of coffee in that seal too, just to kind of tweak it a little bit. So, okay. But we got all that coffee and gear on there. It's huntersblendcoffee.com.
Okay. We'll be sure to put links to all of that in the show notes so people can find it easy and follow you guys and check you out. So
great.
All right. Well, Mike, I want to thank you for, like I said, taking time to talk to us, and good luck with everything that you guys are doing. I really I think this was a great conversation, and I really like the things that you guys are doing in the coffee space for these farmers that you guys are helping to support in those communities, as well as what you guys are doing for the hunting community. So keep up the good work.
Well, I appreciate it, Jason, and Jake and Jeff. Just appreciate the opportunity to chat a little bit, and it's always good to talk to fellow Ohioans, and hope you have all have a good. Do you all hunt like close to home up there?
Yep. Yeah, generally.
And you're in really good country. Well, we are. I mean, most of Ohio really.
Yeah.
Is pretty.
Yeah, and then we do have a hunting cabin down in southeast Ohio, like Wayne National Forest down that way. So we go down there.
Yeah. What county?
Washington.
Oh, yeah. That's over by. I know where you're at. Yeah.
Yeah, by Marietta there down that way.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, nice country down there.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, good luck this year. Hope you guys do well.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
See you guys.
And there you have it. I want to thank Mike for taking time to talk to us. Like I said, I really enjoyed this conversation. I thought it went really well. And just think about some of your buying decisions going forward. That's one thing that I took away from this is the non-hunting products that you buy, you may be inadvertently supporting anti-hunting organizations. So just think about that kind of stuff, and check out Hunter's Blend if you're looking for a coffee company that supports conservation and supports hunting. Some updates from us. Website is live, ohiohuntsman.com, so we're always going to be posting new stuff there. One really cool thing is our decals, our home decals and our Ohio Huntsman decals are live on the website, so you can go there and buy them. Check those out. We've got a lot of interest in those, and pretty excited about having those ready for you guys to check out. So, without further ado, I guess if you guys enjoyed this, one other quick announcement, I guess, is if you enjoyed this, share it with your friends, take a screenshot of the episode, share it to your social media, make sure you tag us, and that way we know that you enjoyed it. We can repost it, and helps get the word out. So hopefully you guys are getting ready for deer season. It's just around the corner. I know I'm got a little bit of anxiety because I feel like I got a ton of stuff to do and not a lot of time to do it. One nice thing is Jacob and I did go to a really nice public archery range close to our houses here on Friday, this past Friday, and shot our bows for a while and stretched them out to 60 yards, which was fun. So hopefully, like I said, you guys are doing some of the same things, spending time with your bow, getting some last things kind of tweaked and tuned, and getting ready for season to open up here in not too many more weeks. So with that, thanks for listening.